Hi, I'd like to talk to you about a new initiative that's being developed by the Earth Systems Governance Research Alliance. The Taskforce on the Conceptual Foundations of Earth Systems Governance is concerned to look at the new ideas which are being formulated today as we attempt to come to terms with key environmental problems confronting modern societies. The task force will be looking at these ideas, trying to interrogate them, examine them, and develop them in order that they can be more effectively deployed to resolve environmental problems. Major political and economic and social change is typically accompanied by a shift in the thought categories which we use to understand the world around us and which we deploy as we try to take action and work together to build a better world. Think, for example, of big ideas like the environment or biodiversity. Although the word environment has been with us for a long time, it's only comparatively recently that we began to use it in this broad sense of describing the world around us on which we depend for so much, but which is also being threatened by human activity. This idea of the threatened environment really came to the fore in the 1960s. And it served to draw together a whole series of problems which people were beginning to notice. For example, ideas of pollution, deforestation, problems with mining and industrial activity. Once we had the idea of the environment, all these separate problems became organized, became part of a more general worry about the relationship between human beings and the natural world on which we depend. It's also true that once one began to think of the environment as something that was under threat or which could be damaged by humankind, then it made sense to talk about protecting the environment. And it was, in fact, exactly in the second half of the 1960s and the early 1970s that around the OECD countries, the first initiatives were made to set up national ministries, agencies, and so on, special advisory councils, which dealt with trying to ensure environmental protection. To put this another way, once we began to understand the environment as threatened, it made sense to organize ourselves to establish government action to try and protect the environment. Or consider the idea of biodiversity. Conservation activities and things like national parks and concern with species extinction has existed for quite a long time. But in the late 1980s, conservation biologists came together and formulated this new idea of biodiversity, which summed up the idea of the variety of different species and ecosystems and genetic diversity, which was the great richness of life on Earth today. And in a relatively short time, this idea of biodiversity was enshrined in an international convention, which was open for signature in 1992. And today, it organizes conservation activities and activities to protect this diversity around the world. Sustainable development is another one of these emergent ideas. In this case, it's one that tries to give the idea of an alternative human development trajectory, one that gives greater attention to protecting the environment and also to promoting equity, particularly equity between the global north and the global south. As our understanding of the scale of the environmental problems faced by modern society has grown, a series of new ideas have been suggested by scientists, by government officials, by people working in environmental organizations, ideas that can help us orient our understanding of the situation and also point towards direction of change. For example, some have suggested the notion of the Anthropocene, the name for a new geological epoch that captures the fact that today human beings are actually transforming the overall situation of the planet. and we need a new term to describe the new world that we are in fact making. Another idea that's recently been discussed is that of planetary boundaries. The idea here is that on a series of specific issues, we are creating significant changes to the Earth, and that there are limits to how far we could push that change without seriously changing the condition of the Earth's system. For example, the climate change problem is well known. Another is the issue of ocean acidification, where we're actually changing the acidity of the seas. The issue of the nitrogen cycle is another one. In each of these cases, one can argue that we need to understand these planetary boundaries and then act to keep human action within them so we do not destabilize the environment on which we depend. Another idea is that of the green economy. So this is, if you like, a kind of positive idea of creating a new economy, an economy where we'll be able to satisfy human needs and aspirations, but without risking compromising ecological systems. So this means developing new patterns of production and also consumption, which are less environmentally damaging. Some people also talk, for example, of sustainable consumption. And this idea problematizes the lifestyles that we live in the affluent countries, where we consume a great deal. And they ask, do we need all that we consume? But also the fact that the world is polarized between rich and poor, between some people who have quite a lot and other people who cannot meet their basic needs. The concept of the low-carbon transition focuses on the idea of how we can move our economies away from dependence on energy systems that emit greenhouse gases. The idea is that over 1, 2, 3 generations, we will radically transform our economic activities in the built environment, transportation, energy, agriculture, so that we can have a society that does not risk destabilizing the climate system. Other scholars have spoken about the idea for a new sustainability science that will make the problem of environment and sustainability central to the agenda of the natural and the social sciences. Our task force will be looking at ideas like these. We're interested in critically interrogating them, in asking questions like, how have they developed? What do they have to offer? Are they really making a difference in practice? And our goal is to understand, can we improve them or refine them to make them more applicable to dealing with the environmental problems that confront us? There's also the question of whether they speak towards different groups in different ways. How are they received by men and women, the rich, the poor, people in the global south or the global north? These are the sorts of issues which our task force will be concerned with. And above all, we're concerned with developing new ideas which can help us deal with these problems. One thing we want to do is encourage collaboration between scholars in the north and the south, more experienced scholars, also with emerging researchers, in order to develop a collaborative effort to debate and develop these ideas. If you're interested in working with us, please look at the Earth Systems Governance website and follow the links that will tell you about the work of our task force. Thank you.